pop the trunk. Now! You know how this works for your kind.
I haven't done anything wrong, officer.
That's how this works.
He laughed through his teeth.
You're out here sniffing around my county past midnight like a stray dog looking for scraps. Your kind always got a reason.
I'm just driving to see my mother. Please.
Cut the crap! Your mother? Whole family pushing dope. I can smell it on your kind from a mile away.
I haven't done anything wrong.
3
See
cars
that?
passed.
Nobody
Headlights
cares.
swept across her pinned body. Not one
Please.
slowed down. 30 seconds later, he
Let's
pulled a
see what
bag
you're
of white
hiding.
powder from her trunk.
Well,
A bag
what
she
do
had
we
never
have
seen
here?
in her life.
That's not mine.
What he didn't know? That bag just ended his career, his freedom, and everything he thought protected him. 12 hours earlier, Iris Walker stood at the head of a conference table on the 9th floor of the DEA's Atlanta Field Division. The room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers. 14 agents sat around the table, files spread across every surface. A wall-mounted screen displayed a map of Interstate 20 with red dots marking known trafficking routes stretching from El Paso to Savannah. Iris pointed at a cluster of dots near the Georgia-Alabama border. We've got 3 confirmed loads intercepted in the last month. That corridor is heating up. I want wiretap extensions filed by Friday. Nobody argued. Nobody asked twice. When Iris Walker gave a directive, people wrote it down and moved. She wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive. She ran her division the way a surgeon runs an operating room, precise, calm, and absolutely in control. 2 decades in federal law enforcement had taught her that the person who stays quiet holds the power. After the briefing, her office emptied. She leaned back in her chair, rubbed her eyes, and picked up her phone. "Hey, Mama." Lorraine Walker's voice came through warm and slow, like honey stirred into tea. "Baby, please tell me you're still coming." "I'm leaving at 6. I'll be there by 10. "I made peach cobbler." Iris smiled. The first real smile she'd had all week. "Save me the corner piece." She changed out of her blazer, slipped on jeans, a plain gray top, and sneakers. Her badge went into the desk drawer. Her service weapon went into the office safe. She locked both. Tonight, she wasn't the DEA chief. She was just a daughter, driving home for her mother's birthday. By 6:15 p.m., Iris was southbound on I-75. The Atlanta skyline shrank in her rearview mirror. Strip malls gave way to pine trees. 4 lanes became 2. The air through her cracked window turned thick and sweet with Georgia humidity. She kept the radio low, a gospel station out of Macon, soft organ chords and a choir humming something familiar. The kind of music her mother played every Sunday morning while pressing shirts for church. The highway got darker the farther south she drove. Streetlights vanished. Shoulders narrowed. At 9:30 p.m., she passed a faded green sign half covered by kudzu. Granger County. Population 11,200. Granger County, mostly white. Economically gutted. The kind of place where the biggest employer was the county government, and the sheriff ran things like a personal kingdom. The department had an unusually high rate of drug arrests from highway stops, numbers that looked great in press releases. Civil rights groups had started asking questions. Nobody in Granger seemed interested in answering. Iris knew counties like this. She'd investigated them. She'd dismantled departments just like it. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about peach cobbler. 20 miles behind her, parked behind a billboard advertising a personal injury lawyer, Deputy Kyle Thornton sat in his cruiser with the engine idling. The interior smelled like cheap air freshener and cold fast food. A half-eaten burger sat on the dashboard. His partner, Deputy Rick Dawson, sat in the passenger seat scrolling his phone. Thornton was talking. He was always talking. 9 this month, Ricky. 9. You know what that means? He held up his hand, fingers spread. Best numbers in the whole department. Sheriff's gonna love me at the next budget meeting. Dawson didn't look up. 9 arrests from traffic stops. Drug seizures, baby. Every single one. Thornton grinned like he'd just told the best joke in the world. He just gotta know what to look for. Dawson shifted in his seat. He'd only been riding with Thornton for 4 months, long enough to notice things, not long enough to say anything about them. Thornton's eyes locked onto his side mirror. A dark blue sedan had just passed them, out of county plates, single driver. He sat up straighter, leaned forward, squinted. The driver was black. Thornton reached for the ignition. That grin again. The one Dawson had learned to dread. Well, well. He pulled out onto the highway, keeping his headlights off for the first 100 yards. That right there is number 10. He followed her for half a mile, waiting, watching. Then he hit the lights. Red and blue exploded across the pine trees. The sedan signaled and pulled to the shoulder. Iris Walker checked her mirror, placed both hands at 10 and 2, and waited. The cruiser's lights pulsed like a heartbeat behind her. Red, blue, red, blue. The rhythm painted the inside of Iris's sedan in flashes. She sat still, hands visible, window already halfway down. The humid night air crept in, carrying the smell of warm asphalt and pine sap. She knew the protocol, not as a citizen, as someone who had trained officers on exactly this kind of encounter. Keep your hands where they can see them. Don't reach for anything. Speak clearly. Stay calm. She also knew something else, something no training manual ever printed. When you are a black woman on a dark road in rural America, calm isn't just a strategy. It's survival. Thornton took his time. He sat in the cruiser for a full 2 minutes, letting the silence and the lights do the work. It was a technique. Make them sweat. Make them wonder. Make them nervous enough to say something stupid. Iris didn't sweat. She waited. Finally, boots on gravel. Slow, heavy steps. Thornton approached from the driver's side, flashlight raised high, not at the car, but directly at her face. The beam was blinding. She couldn't see anything past it, just white light and the silhouette of a man who had already decided what she was. He reached her window and stood there, said nothing for 5 full seconds, just looked at her the way someone looks at something they stepped in. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, no good evening or do you know why I pulled you over? Just a command. Flat, cold, like she didn't deserve the courtesy of a complete sentence. Iris kept her voice even. May I ask why I've been stopped? Thornton tilted his head. The flashlight didn't move. I'll ask the questions. You give the answers. That's how this works. License, registration, now. She reached slowly, deliberately, for her glove box. Every movement exaggerated, every gesture visible. She handed him the documents. He snatched them from her hand without looking at them, stared at her a beat longer, then walked back to his cruiser. Dawson was already running the plates when Thornton slid into the driver's seat. What'd we get? Thornton asked, tossing her license onto the console. Dawson read the screen. Iris Walker, Atlanta address. Clean record, no warrants, no flags, nothing. Thornton frowned. He picked up the license, studied it under the dome light, flipped it over like he expected to find something hidden on the back. Clean, Dawson repeated. Maybe just let her go. Thornton didn't answer. He stared at the license for a long time. Then he opened his door. Stay here, he told Dawson. He walked back to Iris's window. This time, slower. The gravel crunched under each step like he was counting them. Ma'am? The word sounded wrong in his mouth, like he'd borrowed it. You were swerving back there, crossed the center line twice. Iris hadn't swerved. She knew it. He knew it. The road was straight for the last 3 miles. There was no center line to cross. "Officer, I was driving within the lane. I've been on this road for—" "Are you calling me a liar?" The question came fast, sharp, designed to shut her down. Iris paused, took a breath. "No, sir. I'm just stating what happened." Thornton leaned both forearms on her door. His face was close enough that she could smell the onion from his dinner. His body camera was clipped to his chest, powered off. She noticed. He didn't know she noticed. "Here's what I think happened," he said, voice dropping low. "I think you came down here from Atlanta carrying something you shouldn't be carrying, and I think if I look hard enough, I'm going to find it." "I don't consent to a search of my vehicle," she said it clearly, calmly, loud enough for Dawson to hear from the cruiser. Thornton smiled. It wasn't a real smile. It was the expression of a man who had heard those words 100 times and never once let them stop him. "That's cute." He straightened up. "Step out of the vehicle." "On what grounds?" "I said step out." Iris unbuckled her seatbelt. She opened the door slowly, placed one foot on the gravel, then the other, stood to her full height, 5'8", and faced him directly. For just a second, something flickered across Thornton's face. Most people he pulled over were shaking by now, crying, pleading. This woman looked at him like she was memorizing him. It unsettled him. So he pushed harder, hands on the hood. She complied, palms flat against warm metal. The engine was still ticking beneath her fingers. Thornton circled the car. He opened the driver's door and rifled through the glove box, pulled out a pack of tissues, a phone charger, a folded map, tossed each item onto the passenger seat. He checked the center console, a half-empty water bottle, a gas receipt. Nothing. He opened the back seat, ran his flashlight across the floor, patted the seat cushions, lifted the floor mats. Nothing. He was getting frustrated. Iris could hear it in his breathing, shorter, faster, heavier. The kind of breathing that comes before something reckless. He walked to the rear of the car and stood at the trunk. "Open it." "I do not consent to a search of my trunk." She said it facing forward, hands still on the hood, voice steady as stone. "I wasn't asking your permission." He reached through the open driver's door and pulled the interior trunk release. The latch popped with a dull click. The trunk lid rose about 6 inches. Thornton walked behind the car. He lifted the trunk lid all the way up. The interior light cast a weak yellow glow over a small overnight bag, a box wrapped in birthday paper, and a pair of flat shoes. That was it. A daughter's overnight bag for her mother's birthday. Thornton stood behind the raised trunk lid, completely hidden from Iris's line of sight. She couldn't see his hands. She couldn't see what he was doing. All she could hear was the sound of items being shifted around. 30 seconds, maybe 35. Then his hand went into his jacket pocket, and then back into the trunk. He emerged holding a sealed plastic bag. Inside it, a white crystalline powder, about 28 grams, just enough to push the charge from possession into trafficking. He held it up to the light with 2 fingers. His face was pure theater. Wide eyes, raised brows, open mouth. The performance of a man pretending to be surprised by his own work. "Well, well, well." His voice carried across the still night air. "What do we have here?" Iris turned her head. She saw the bag. She saw his face. And she understood everything in a single heartbeat. "That is not mine." "They all say that." "That is not mine." "Turn around. Hands behind your back." She didn't resist. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She turned around, placed her wrists together, and felt the cold steel close around them. Thornton tightened the cuffs 1 click past necessary. The metal bit into her skin. He leaned in, his mouth close to her ear. His breath was hot and sour. "Welcome to prison, sweetheart." He walked her to the cruiser, opened the back door, placed his hand on top of her head, and pushed her down into the seat. The door slammed shut. Through the cage partition, she could see Thornton holding up the bag for Dawson, shaking it like a trophy. Dawson stared at it, then looked at Iris in the back seat. Something crossed his face. Not quite guilt, not quite doubt. Something quieter. The look of a man who was starting to count the cost of staying silent. Iris sat in the darkness of that back seat. The cuffs dug into her wrists. The vinyl smelled like sweat and disinfectant. The lights were still flashing. Red, blue, red, blue. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She started counting. Timestamps, words, badge numbers. Every detail filed away behind calm, unblinking eyes. Because Iris Walker wasn't just a woman who knew her rights. She was a woman who had spent 20 years building cases against people exactly like Kyle Thornton. And she was already building one now. The cruiser pulled into the Granger County Sheriff's Station at 10:42 p.m. Iris noted the time on the dashboard clock. She noted everything. The building was a squat brick rectangle with fluorescent lights buzzing behind barred windows. An American flag hung limp on a pole out front. No breeze. The air was thick and still, like the whole county was holding its breath. Thornton parked around back, near a steel door marked Processing. He killed the engine but left the lights on. Sat there for a moment, adjusting his hair in the rearview mirror. Taking his time, enjoying this. He opened her door and pulled her out by the arm, not gently. The gravel parking lot was uneven, and with her hands cuffed behind her, Iris stumbled. Thornton didn't steady her. He watched her catch herself and kept walking. Inside, the station smelled like floor wax and old paper. A long hallway lit by overhead tubes that hummed and flickered. At the end of it, a processing room with a counter, a camera mounted on a tripod, and an ink pad sitting on a metal tray. A female officer stood behind the counter. Her name tag read Collins, mid-40s, tired eyes. She looked up when Thornton walked Iris in, and something shifted in her expression. Not alarm exactly, but awareness. The kind of look someone gets when the math doesn't add up. Iris was calm, cooperative, articulate. She wasn't shaking or sweating or avoiding eye contact. She stood straight and answered every processing question in a clear, measured voice. Full name, date of birth, address, emergency contact. Collins typed each answer slowly. Her eyes kept drifting back to Iris's face, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she couldn't name. Thornton stood in the corner with his arms crossed, badge catching the fluorescent light. He was narrating the arrest to Dawson like a fisherman telling the story of his biggest catch. 28 grams, right there in the trunk. Didn't even try to hide it. He shook his head, grinning. They never learn. Collins glanced at him, then back at Iris. She said nothing. The mugshot camera flashed. The ink pad stained Iris's fingertips black. Her personal belongings were cataloged and sealed in a clear plastic bag. Her phone, her car keys, a small leather wallet, and a silver bracelet her mother had given her 10 years ago. Iris watched the bracelet go into the bag. That was the first moment her jaw tightened, the only crack in the armor. It lasted half a second, then it was gone. "I'd like to make my phone call," she said. Thornton didn't even look at her. "System's down." "The phone system is down?" "That's what I said. Maybe in the morning." He pushed off the wall and nodded toward the hallway. "Take her back." Collins led Iris down a corridor lined with holding cells. Most were empty. The one at the end had a metal bench bolted to the wall, a steel toilet with no seat, and a single bulb caged behind wire mesh. The air smelled like bleach and rust. The cell door closed with a sound Iris knew well. She'd heard it hundreds of times from the other side. The heavy clank of steel locking into steel. But tonight, for the first time in her career, she heard it from inside. She sat on the bench. The metal was cold through her jeans. She placed her hands on her knees and stared at the wall. She wasn't afraid. Fear was a luxury for people who didn't have a plan. Iris Walker had a plan. She just needed a phone. Back in the processing room, Thornton was already writing his report. He pecked at the keyboard with 2 fingers, tongue pressed against his lower lip. The words came easy. He'd written this story before. Probable cause. Strong odor of marijuana emanating from the vehicle. Upon search of the trunk, officers discovered approximately 28 grams of a white, powdery substance consistent with cocaine. Clean, clinical, designed to hold up in court, designed to be unchallengeable. He filed it, logged the evidence bag, and clocked out. By 11:15 p.m., Thornton and Dawson were sitting in a booth at Rosie's Diner, 3 miles from the station. The place smelled like bacon grease and burnt pie crust. A jukebox in the corner played something old and country. Thornton ordered pecan pie and black coffee. Dawson ordered nothing. He sat across from Thornton, peeling the label off a water bottle, not looking up. Relax, Ricky. Thornton forked a piece of pie into his mouth. Clean arrest. Open and shut. She said the stuff wasn't hers. They always say that. She was different, Kyle. She wasn't what? Thornton's fork stopped mid-air. His eyes went hard. She wasn't the type? What type is that, Ricky? You got a type now? Dawson went quiet. He kept peeling the label. Thornton softened his voice, the way a man does when he's not apologizing, but warning. Listen, we do good work out here. We keep this county clean. Sheriff's happy. Numbers are up. Nobody's asking questions. Don't start making problems where there aren't any. He flagged the waitress for a refill, leaned back in the booth. She's got a public defender by morning, a plea deal by Thursday, and a guilty verdict by June. That's how this works. That's how it always works. He took another bite, chewed slowly, smiled. At that exact moment, 3 miles away, Iris Walker sat in a cell counting ceiling tiles. Her wrists still carried the red impressions of the cuffs. Her fingertips were still stained with ink. Hours passed. The fluorescent light above her cell never turned off. It buzzed like a living thing. Every 20 minutes, a deputy walked past and glanced through the bars. Iris didn't move, didn't speak, didn't sleep. At 1:47 a.m., Collins came back. She stood outside the cell with a key ring in one hand and something close to guilt on her face. "Phone's working now," she said. "You get 1 call." Iris stood, followed Collins to a wall-mounted phone near the processing desk, picked up the receiver. The plastic was cold against her ear. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call her mother. She dialed a number she knew by heart. The personal cell of SAC Neil Hastings, her direct colleague at the DEA Atlanta Field Division. It rang 3 times. A groggy voice answered. "Hastings." "Neil, it's Iris." Silence. Then the sound of a man sitting up fast, sheets rustling, a lamp clicking on. "Iris? What's going on? It's 2 in the—" "Listen to me carefully." Her voice was low, controlled, and precise. Every word selected like ammunition. "I've been arrested in Granger County on a planted narcotics charge. Deputy named Thornton. Badge number I'll give you in a moment. I need you to activate the OPR complaint and contact the FBI Civil Rights Division. Tonight, Neil. Not morning. Tonight." "Iris, what? Planted? Are you—" "And Neil." She paused, Let the silence carry the weight. Pull my GPS vehicle tracker log every second of tonight. The trunk sensor data too. That's going to be the whole case. Hastings was quiet for 3 seconds. When he spoke again, the grogginess was gone, replaced by something colder. The voice of a man who had just moved from confusion to fury. I'm making calls right now. Don't say another word to anyone. I'll have a team there by sunrise.
Iris hung up, walked back to her cell, sat on the bench, placed her hands on her knees. And for the first time since the cuffs went on, she closed her eyes. Not to sleep, to wait. Because the machinery she had just set in motion was bigger than Kyle Thornton, bigger than Granger County, bigger than anything that small-town badge could comprehend. 3 miles away, Thornton paid his check, tipped $2, and drove home whistling. He slept like a baby.
It would be the last peaceful night of his life. Kyle Thornton pulled into the station parking lot at 7:58 a.m., 2 minutes early for his shift. Coffee in one hand, sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. The morning sun hit the windshield and warmed his face. He was already thinking about lunch. Then he saw the SUVs. 3 of them, black, tinted windows, federal plates, parked in a row right in front of the station entrance, like a wall. He slowed his truck to a crawl, stared. His coffee hand dropped to his lap. The front door of the station was propped open. 2 men in dark suits stood on either side of it. They weren't Granger County. They weren't state police. They had the posture of people who answered to Washington. Thornton sat in his truck for a full minute. His mouth was dry. His brain was doing the math, but the numbers weren't adding up to anything good. He grabbed his coffee, climbed out, and walked toward the entrance. Tried to keep his stride normal. Tried to look like a man who had nothing to worry about. One of the suited men held up a hand. "Deputy Thornton?" "Yeah." "Come with us, please." It wasn't a request. They led him down the hallway. His hallway, the one he walked every day. Past the processing room, past the break room, to the small interrogation room at the back of the building. The room he'd sat in dozens of times across from suspects he'd cuffed on the highway. Today, the chair on the other side was waiting for him. Inside, a woman sat at the table. Black, mid-30s, sharp suit. A federal ID badge clipped to her lapel. A manila folder closed in front of her. She didn't stand when he entered. "Sit down, Deputy." Thornton sat. The chair felt different from this side. "I'm Assistant United States Attorney Carla Preston, FBI Civil Rights Division." She let that land, watched his face process it. "Do you know why I'm here?" "No, ma'am." His voice cracked on the second word. Preston opened the folder. Slowly. The way someone opens a door they know leads somewhere the other person doesn't want to go. She slid a photograph across the table, 8 by 10, color. An official portrait, the kind taken against a blue backdrop with an American flag in the corner. Iris Walker. Hair pulled back, navy blazer, a small gold pin on her lapel. Below the photo, printed in clean black letters, Iris Walker, Regional Chief, Drug Enforcement Administration, Atlanta Field Division. Thornton stared at the photo. His lips parted. No sound came out. Preston leaned forward. "Last night, you conducted an unauthorized traffic stop on this woman. You fabricated probable cause. You performed an illegal search, and you planted approximately 28 grams of cocaine in her vehicle." That's not... You then arrested a senior federal law enforcement executive on charges you manufactured. You denied her access to a phone for over 3 hours, and you filed a false report documenting evidence you yourself placed. Thornton's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table to stop it. The drugs were in her trunk. I found them. That's what happened. Preston didn't blink. She reached into the folder and pulled out a second document. A printed GPS log, time-stamped, mile by mile, second by second. Iris Walker's vehicle, tracked from the DEA motor pool in Atlanta to the exact point of the stop on Highway 16. Her vehicle was in continuous motion from Atlanta, Preston said. No stops, no detours, no contact with any known location or associate. The cocaine was not in that vehicle when it left the city. She placed a third sheet on the table. A trunk sensor readout, standard on DEA fleet-adjacent vehicles. It showed the trunk being opened at a timestamp that matched the moment Thornton was standing alone behind the car. The trunk was accessed after you were already positioned behind the vehicle. No one else touched it. Thornton opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Preston wasn't finished. She pulled a laptop from her bag, turned it to face him, and pressed play. Dashcam footage. His own cruiser. The timestamp in the corner matched last night. The angle showed the rear of Iris's sedan clearly, the trunk lid up, Thornton standing behind it. His right hand reached into his jacket pocket, came back out, went into the trunk. 30 seconds. Every frame damning. Preston closed the laptop. Would you like to revise your statement, Deputy? The room was silent. The air conditioning hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang twice and stopped. Thornton stared at the table. His badge suddenly felt very heavy on his chest. 20 minutes later, Iris Walker walked out of the holding area. Same jeans, same gray top, same sneakers. No cuffs, no ink on her fingers. She'd washed them twice. She walked down the hallway toward the front exit. Calm, unhurried. The same way she walked into every room she'd ever commanded. Halfway down the corridor, she passed a man going the other direction, hands cuffed behind his back. 2 FBI agents flanking him. Head down. Kyle Thornton, walking toward the same cell she had just left. Iris stopped. He stopped. Their eyes met. She said nothing, not a word, not a sound. She just looked at him, steady, unblinking, for 3 full seconds. Then she turned and walked into the morning sunlight. The door closed behind her. They put Thornton in the same chair Iris had sat in during booking. Same counter, same camera, same ink pad. Collins stood behind the counter again. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. The quiet satisfaction of a woman who had sensed something was wrong and had just been proven right. Thornton's hands trembled as they pressed into the ink. His fingers left smudged prints. Sloppy, uneven. Nothing like the clean, precise prints Iris had left 12 hours earlier. His mugshot was taken under the same fluorescent light, but where Iris had faced the camera with steady, unblinking eyes, Thornton couldn't hold still. His jaw kept shifting, his gaze kept dropping. He looked like a man watching his own life leave the room. Back in the interrogation room, AUSA Carla Preston laid it out for him. Slow, clear. The way you explain something to someone who still thinks there's a way out. You're facing federal charges, Deputy. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Evidence tampering. False arrest. Filing a false police report. Thornton shook his head, kept shaking it like the motion could undo something. I can explain. It was a routine stop. I followed procedure. The drugs were yours. Preston's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. We have dashcam footage of you reaching into your own pocket before placing a substance in the trunk. We have GPS data proving the vehicle was clean. We have a trunk sensor log. And we have your own partner. That last word hit different. Thornton's head snapped up. Rick? Deputy Dawson is in the next room. The color left Thornton's face like water draining from a sink. Dawson was already talking. Had been talking since 6:30 a.m. when FBI agents knocked on his apartment door and showed him two options. Option 1. Cooperate, provide a full, sworn statement, and face reduced charges. Option 2. Go down with Thornton for every single stop, every single bag, every single lie. Dawson chose option 1 before they finished explaining option 2. His statement was detailed. Names, dates, locations. At least 12 prior stops where Thornton had planted narcotics, all on Black or Latino drivers, all on the same stretch of Highway 16, all resulting in convictions or coerced plea deals from public defenders who never questioned the evidence. 12 people, exposed to the same lie Iris had been exposed to, except none of them had a GPS tracker. None of them had a trunk sensor. None of them had the personal number of a federal agent on speed dial. They had nothing. And they went to prison anyway. Preston compiled Dawson's statement, cross-referenced it with arrest records, and handed the file to the FBI team lead. The scope was no longer one bad stop. It was a pattern, a system, a career built on planting evidence on people who couldn't fight back. Down the hall, Sheriff Dale Brannigan sat in his office with two FBI agents and a door he wished he hadn't opened. They placed internal complaint records on his desk. 6 complaints filed against Thornton over 3 years. Racial profiling, excessive force, suspicious evidence handling. Every single one marked, reviewed, no action required, in Brannigan's handwriting. Sheriff, were you aware of Deputy Thornton's conduct during traffic stops? Brannigan ran his tongue across his lower lip. Kyle's a good officer. His numbers speak for themselves. His numbers are fabricated, and you signed off on every one of them. Brannigan was suspended, effective immediately, his badge and weapon collected before he left the building. By noon, he was standing in front of cameras in the parking lot, giving a press conference that fooled no one. I had no knowledge of any misconduct within my department. I am fully cooperating with the federal investigation. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. Sheriff, 6 complaints were filed and you personally closed all of them. How is that no knowledge? Brannigan blinked, opened his mouth, closed it. The press conference ended 90 seconds later. Meanwhile, in the parking lot behind the station, Iris Walker leaned against her sedan and called her mother. Lorraine answered on the first ring. Baby, where are you? Are you all right? I've been calling since... I'm okay, Mama. Iris's voice softened in a way it never did at work. I'm okay. I'll be there in an hour. A pause. Then Lorraine, quiet and steady. I saved you the corner piece. Iris smiled, closed her eyes, let the morning sun warm her face. I know you did, Mama. The FBI didn't just investigate Kyle Thornton. They dismantled him. Within 72 hours of his arrest, a federal forensic team arrived in Granger County. 2 unmarked vans, 14 agents, boxes, hard drives, evidence bags, and a stack of subpoenas thick enough to break a desk. They set up a temporary command post in the Granger County Public Library, the only building in town with enough space and no connection to the sheriff's department. They seized every narcotics case file from the department going back 5 years, every arrest report Thornton had ever written, every evidence log he had ever signed, every field test result, every booking photo. They pulled the physical evidence too. Bags of powder, field test kits, chain of custody forms, all of it boxed, labeled, and shipped to the DEA Forensic Laboratory in Atlanta for independent testing. The results came back in waves, and each wave was worse than the last. Of 31 drug arrests attributed to Thornton over the past 4 years, Forensic analysis flagged 19 as suspicious. The substances recovered from these cases shared identical chemical markers, the same purity level, the same cutting agents, the same trace compounds. Not from multiple street-level dealers, not from different supply chains. One source. Investigators traced that source to a sealed container found in the back of Thornton's personal locker at the station, a locker no other deputy had access to. A locker he kept padlocked with his own combination. He hadn't just planted evidence once, he had maintained a supply, restocked it, portioned it out, treated it like inventory in a business, because to him, that's exactly what it was. Every planted bag was a stat. Every stat was a number on a spreadsheet. Every number kept the sheriff happy and kept Thornton untouchable. Until now. 12 cases were confirmed as wrongful convictions. 12 people who had been stopped on a dark road, searched without cause, arrested on fabricated evidence, assigned overwhelmed public defenders, pressured into plea deals, and sentenced to years inside concrete walls for crimes that never existed. 8 of them were still incarcerated, sitting in cells at that very moment, eating prison food, wearing prison clothes, counting days on calendars that should never have started. The federal court in Atlanta issued emergency orders. One by one, the convictions were vacated. One by one, the paperwork moved through the system. One by one, the cell doors opened. Devin Williams walked out of Macon State Prison on a Tuesday morning at 9:14 a.m. He was 23 years old. He had served 3 years and 4 months for possession with intent to distribute, a charge built entirely on a bag Thornton planted during a routine traffic stop on Highway 16. Devin was 19 when he went in, a sophomore at a community college studying business administration. He missed his mother's funeral, missed his sister's wedding, missed his nephew being born. 3 years and 4 months of a life he was never going to get back. When he stepped through the gate, his sister was waiting in the parking lot. She didn't say anything. She just ran. He caught her and held on so tight his arms shook. They stood like that for a long time. Neither of them let go first. Patricia Dawes was released from Pulaski State Prison after 2 years and 8 months. She had been driving home from a double shift at a packaging plant when Thornton pulled her over at 11:30 p.m. She lost her job within a week of her arrest, lost her apartment the following month, lost custody of her 6-year-old daughter during the trial. Her daughter was placed with a foster family in another county. Patricia hadn't held her in over 2 years. 8 people. 8 stolen lives. Returns to a world that had kept moving without them. The media didn't just cover the story, they detonated it. CNN ran it as breaking news at noon on a Wednesday. By evening, every major network had followed. The headline wrote itself. Variations of the same devastating sentence splashed across every screen in America. DEA chief arrested by corrupt deputy who planted drugs in her car. Corrupt Georgia cop planted cocaine on federal agent, exposed by her own tracking system. 12 wrongful convictions exposed after deputy plants drugs on DEA regional chief. Social media caught fire. Clips from the courthouse steps, photos of the freed, screenshots of Thornton's booking photo next to his official department portrait. Comment sections flooded with rage, relief, and one question repeated 10,000 times. How long would this have continued if he had picked a different driver that night? Iris Walker's name was everywhere. Interview requests flooded the DEA's public affairs office. Every network wanted her face. Every producer wanted the exclusive. She declined them all. Instead, she released a single written statement through the DEA communications office. 41 words. What happens to me happens to people who don't have a badge or a title. I had the tools to prove my innocence. Most people don't. They are the ones who need your attention. Not me. The statement was shared 4 million times in 48 hours. Printed on protest signs outside the Granger County Courthouse, read aloud on the Senate floor by a Georgia congresswoman who choked up on the last sentence. Quoted in law school classrooms, police reform panels, and editorial boards from Atlanta to New York. Iris never commented further. She let the words stand alone. They didn't need her help. The federal trial began 6 weeks later in the Northern District of Georgia. United States versus Thornton, AUSA. Carla Preston led the prosecution. The courtroom was packed every day. Press filled the gallery. Camera crews camped on the courthouse steps. A line of spectators wrapped around the block each morning before the doors opened. Preston built the case the way Iris would have, one brick at a time. Dashcam footage, GPS logs, trunk sensor data, forensic lab results linking every planted bag to Thornton's locker, chain of custody failures. Dawson's sworn testimony delivered in a shaking voice over 3 hours on the stand. And then the witnesses. 4 of the 12 wrongfully convicted took the stand. One by one, they described, in quiet, steady voices, the night they were stopped. The flashlight in their eyes, the lies about swerving, the smell excuse, the hand in the trunk, the cuffs, the cell, the plea deal their public defender told them to take because fighting was worse than losing. One woman paused mid-testimony, looked directly at Thornton, said, "You took 2 years from my daughter. She still flinches when she sees a police car." The courtroom was silent for 10 seconds. Thornton's defense attorney argued the stop was routine, that the drugs were legitimately discovered, that the dashcam footage was inconclusive and the angle misleading. The jury watched the footage 3 times. Thornton's hand going into his jacket, coming back out, going into the trunk, frame by frame, second by second. They deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. Every count. The sentencing hearing was held 2 weeks later. Thornton stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit. No badge, no gun, no smirk. Just a man in chains staring at the floor. 25 years. Federal prison. No parole eligibility for 20 years. The judge removed her glasses and spoke directly to him. "You swore an oath to protect. Instead, you weaponized your badge against the very people you were duty-bound to serve. You manufactured crimes. You destroyed lives. And you did it knowing that the people you targeted had no power to stop you. This court has no tolerance and no mercy for that betrayal." Thornton was let out through a side door. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Everyone in that courtroom had already stopped looking at him. Sheriff Dale Brannigan was tried separately. Obstruction of justice, civil rights violations, willful failure to investigate credible complaints. He sat on the stand and claimed ignorance with the confidence of a man who had been lying for so long he'd forgotten what truth sounded like. The jury didn't believe him. 10 years. Federal prison. Deputy Rick Dawson received a reduced sentence of 3 years for his cooperation. He was permanently banned from law enforcement in any state. When he left the courtroom, he didn't speak to reporters. He walked to his car with his head down and drove away. But the consequences didn't stop at prison sentences. The Department of Justice imposed a federal consent decree on the Granger County Sheriff's Office, a legally binding order placing the entire department under outside supervision. Mandatory body cameras with tamper-proof activation for every officer on every shift. An independent civilian oversight board with full subpoena power. A complete review of every arrest made in the county over the preceding decade. No exceptions, no delays. Iris Walker was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee on racial profiling in rural law enforcement. She sat behind a single microphone in a wood-paneled hearing room in Washington, D.C., and spoke for 45 minutes without notes. She didn't raise her voice, didn't dramatize, didn't perform. She presented data, case numbers, exposed patterns. She walked the committee through the gap between written policy and daily practice in departments across the country, the stops that never get reviewed, the complaints that never get filed, the body cameras that never get turned on. When she finished, the committee chair removed his glasses, leaned into his microphone, and said simply, "Thank you, Chief Walker. This testimony will not be forgotten." Iris nodded once, collected her folder, stood, and walked out the same way she always did. Straight ahead, eyes forward, unhurried. Iris Walker was offered a promotion 3 months after the trial. Deputy Administrator, Washington, D.C. A corner office with a view of the Capitol Dome, the kind of title that ends careers on a high note. She turned it down in a single phone call. "I appreciate it, sir, but my work is here." Here meant Atlanta. Here meant the field. Here meant staying close to the communities she served, and close to her mother, who still made peach cobbler every time Iris drove down on weekends. But Iris didn't just go back to work. She built something. She used her own savings to establish a legal defense fund, a small nonprofit focused on one specific mission: representing people who had been wrongfully convicted through planted evidence in rural jurisdictions. The kind of cases that never made national news. The kind of defendants who couldn't afford a private attorney and got buried by a system that was never designed to catch its own lies. She didn't name the fund after herself. She didn't hold a press conference. She just hired 2 attorneys, rented a small office in downtown Atlanta, and started reviewing cases. Within the first year, the fund identified 9 additional cases across 3 states with evidence patterns that matched what Thornton had done. 4 of those cases resulted in overturned convictions. The 8 people freed from Thornton's lies were rebuilding. Slowly, painfully, but rebuilding. Devin Williams enrolled at Georgia State University. He was 26 years old, sitting in a freshman English class next to 18-year-olds, and he didn't care. He told a reporter, "I lost 3 years. I'm not losing one more day." Patricia Dawes got her daughter back. It took 5 months of family court hearings, a new apartment, and a job at a community health clinic. The first night her daughter slept under her roof again, Patricia didn't sleep at all. She just sat in the doorway of the bedroom and watched her breathe. 2 of the 8 found work through re-entry programs. 1 started a landscaping business. 1 moved out of state to be closer to family. Each of them carried scars that no verdict could erase, but they carried something else too. Proof that the truth, even when it arrives late, still matters. One afternoon, 6 months after the trial, Iris found a letter on her desk at the office. No return address, handwritten on lined notebook paper. The handwriting was uneven, like the person hadn't written anything by hand in a long time. "Dear Chief Walker, you don't know me. My name is Marcus Colvin, and I spent 26 months in prison because of a traffic stop on Highway 16. I didn't have a GPS tracker. I didn't have a badge. I didn't have anyone to call. I just had a public defender who told me to take the plea. When I saw your story on the news, I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for an hour. Not because of what happened to you, because someone finally believed it could happen at all. You didn't just save yourself. You saved us. Thank you." Iris read the letter twice, folded it carefully, placed it in the top drawer of her desk. She kept it there for the rest of her career. On a Friday evening in late October, Iris Walker drove south on Highway 16. Same dark blue sedan, same cracked window, same gospel station humming through the speakers, choir voices lifting over soft organ chords. The sun was setting behind the pine trees. Golden light cut through the branches in long, warm slashes. The air smelled like wood smoke and cooling earth. She passed the faded green sign. Granger County, population 11,200. She didn't flinch, didn't slow down, didn't look twice. She just drove. So here's my question for you. If Iris Walker hadn't been the DEA chief, if she'd been a nurse, a teacher, a mother driving home from a late shift, would this story have ended the same way? Think about that. Really think about it. Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear what you believe, not what you hope. What you actually believe would have happened. And if this story hit you, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story is just a story, but sometimes it's a mirror. And the reflection is harder to ignore than you think. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We've got more stories coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Justice isn't just about catching the bad ones. It's about building a world where the bad ones can't hide. And that world doesn't build itself. It takes people who refuse to look away. Don't look away.
If Iris Walker hasn't been the DEA chief, if she's just been a mother driving home from a late shift, would this story have ended the same way? 30 seconds that already took for Thornton to pan her back and turn an innocent woman into a criminal. He did it 12 times before Iris. 12 people who went to prison, not because they were guilty, but because they had nothing to prove they were innocent. The system didn't fail them. It would never be to protect them. Iris had a GPS tracker, a truck sensor, and a federal agent on a speed dial. It would never be to protect them. Iris had a GPS tracker, a truck sensor, and a federal agent on speed dial. They had nothing, and when she got free, she didn't walk away. She turned around and opened the door for every person still trapped behind her. So here's what I can't stop thinking about. How many people are sitting in a cell right now, not for what they did, but for who they couldn't call? How many Iris Walkers never got their phone call? Tell me in the comments. If this story moved you, share it, like, subscribe, hit that bell. We got more story coming, and you don't want to miss what's next. Justice isn't about catching the bad ones. It's about building a world where they can hide the look away.